What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Built on Boxes YouTube channel. My name is James White. I am the trucking lawyer. Guys, we're going to talk box trucks specifically today, hours of service requirements, and whether or not it's illegal to team drive in a box truck. Now, I know we've covered part of this in a previous video, but we haven't gone into detail. But real quick, guys, if you have a minute, take a minute, say a prayer for our president. If you're a person of faith, if you're not, that's okay too. Be mindful of what we're going through as a country. Say a prayer for our president, for our servicemen and women, for the families of the people who died in that horrific attack in Afghanistan the other day. I think a lot of times we forget how lucky we are that we're sitting here watching YouTube on a weekend. We don't have to worry about some of the stuff that other people in other places have to worry about. We don't have to worry about whether we're going to go out next week and there's nobody going to be there to protect us from a terroristic regime or a government that wants to oppress us or treat us a certain way because of our sexual orientation or our gender. For the most part, it's an incredible opportunity, and you win the birth lottery by being born in the United States. And so I think now is an important time to take inventory of that privilege and be mindful of other people who don't have the same. So with that being said, we appreciate you guys. Please remember to like and subscribe. And what we're going to do now is get into the video on the regulations of driving a box truck, hours of service, and whether or not it's legal to team drive. So I'll give you a hint. It's like everything else with the law. It depends, but essentially it's not legal to drive, say, your full 11 and then switch and let your buddy drive his full 11 or her full 11 because of the regulations as it relates to what is considered on duty. So we're going to go over that in detail so you'll have a reference point for where you can look back at the regulations. So for now, we're just going to get into the video. Section 395.3 of the FMCSA's safety regulations governs the drive time permitted for property carrying vehicles. And as you can note here, it's a little bit, whenever you're reading a statute, whether it's a federal law or state law, it can be a bit overwhelming. They stack stuff on top of each other. They refer to provisions that are, 3 pages ahead. They refer to subsections that are 3 pages behind. And so it's really very difficult, even for somebody who's trained as an attorney, to kind of keep up. But essentially what we need to know is how many hours a day we can drive in a commercial motor vehicle. And we need to know because of the fact that you can drive so many hours and then you can be on duty so many hours, we need to understand what it means to be on duty and how that looks and how it interchanges with the driving requirement. So just as an overview, basically it's saying no motor vehicle can have a driver driving a property carrying motor vehicle unless it complies with these requirements. The first thing you'll see here under section 1, you may not drive without first being off for 10 consecutive hours off duty. So whether that's from the night before or whether you're going to, have 10 hours off at the beginning of this day. So a driver may not drive after a period of 14 consecutive hours after coming on duty following a 10 consecutive hours off duty, meaning you're not allowed to drive. So you start with 10 hours, then you drive, and you're on duty for so many hours, up to 14 hours you can be on duty, and then you can't drive anymore without taking another 10-hour off-duty time. It says you may drive a total of 11 hours during the period specified in the 14-hour period, which is A2. Okay, this is A up here, and this is subsection 2. So a driver may drive a total of 11 hours in a 14-hour period, and the 14-hour period has to be immediately following 10 hours of off-duty time. So that totals 24. Except for drivers who qualify for either short-haul exceptions, we're not going to deal with that. Driving is not permitted for more than 8 hours without at least a consecutive 30-minute interruption in driving status. That can be done either with off-duty or sleeper berth or on duty if you're not driving. So if you're on duty, maybe you're going to take your break while you fuel. And so you can accomplish your 30-minute break on duty getting fuel. You're not allowed to drive more than 60 hours in a 7-day period if your motor carrier operates vehicles that aren't operated every day of the week. So you can have a 60-hour and 7-day clock if your motor carrier does not operate every day of the week. If your motor carrier operates every day of the week, you have to be on a 70-hour and an 8 consecutive day clock. And then after you reach the 70 hours and the 8 consecutive day, or the 60 hours and a 7 consecutive day, you have to have a 34-hour reset. Now, in order to understand what all this stuff means, we have to go back to look at definitions. Well, what does it actually mean to be on duty? Well, we know driving time means all time spent at the driving controls of a commercial motor vehicle in operation. So in operation is important, because if you're just sitting there and you happen to be behind the wheel, you're not in operation. On duty time means all time from the time a driver begins to work or is required to be in readiness to work until the driver is relieved from work and all responsibility for performing work. On-duty time includes all time at a plant, terminal facility, or other property of a motor carrier or shipper, or on any public property waiting to be dispatched unless the driver has been relieved from duty by the motor carrier. All time inspecting, servicing, or conditioning any commercial motor vehicle at any time. All driving time, as defined by the term we just went over, driving time. Now this is the one that's important. All time in or on a commercial motor vehicle other than time spent resting in or on a parked motor vehicle, except as otherwise provided in 397.5. That deals with hazmat. The 397.5 section deals with hazardous materials and what your requirements are as far as staying and watching and surveilling certain classes of hazardous materials. Other than time spent resting in a parked motor vehicle, time spent resting in a sleeper berth, or up to 3 hours riding in the passenger seat of a property-carrying motor vehicle on the highway immediately before or after a period of at least 3 consecutive hours in the sleeper berth. So what that's saying is that you can have 3 hours of time that is considered not on duty, but it has to be because you just came out of the sleeper berth. So if your box truck does not have a sleeper berth, this section does not apply to you. So this isn't a situation where you can hop seats to the other side and say, okay, I just finished my driving, I can ride for 3 more hours and be considered off duty. Okay? If you want the 3 hours that you're riding in the passenger seat to be considered off duty, it must be immediately before or after a period of at least 7 consecutive hours in the sleeper berth. Now back to on duty. All time loading or unloading, supervising or assisting, attending, remaining in readiness to operate, or giving or receiving receipts for shipments loaded or unloaded. All time repairing, obtaining assistance, or remaining in attendance upon a disabled motor vehicle. So if your truck breaks down on the side of the road, you're still on duty. All time spent providing a breath sample should you be asked to do so, including travel time to and from the collection site, complying with random, reasonable suspicion, post-crash, or follow-up testing, which is dealt with by 382. All right, so a sleeper berth means a berth conforming to the requirements of 393.76. That pretty much covers the definitions. We know what we're dealing with now. Let's go back and just have a look at the 393.76 and have a look at the sleeper berths. And this just basically tells you what the dimensions are for sleeper berths, what you have to have. If it was made after September 30th, 1975, it has to be at least 75 inches long and 24 inches wide. And it gives you, it tells you must be constructed so you have access in certain places and that kind of thing. Okay, guys, so I wanted to give you an idea. I know sometimes it's hard to visualize this stuff when we're just talking about it, so I wanted to give you an idea of what it might look like for you to do the 3-hour thing with 2 drivers in the truck. Now remember, driver 1's going to start here at 7 a.m. He's going to do a 15-minute pre-trip inspection. So he starts at 7 a.m. He's going to do a pre-trip inspection from 7 to 7:15. Now, we're going to just assume that driver 2 is just sitting in the truck at this point, okay? But you got to keep in mind, driver 2 is on duty, right? Because he's in the truck. So he starts at 7 as well. When driver 1 starts at 7, even though driver 1's doing a pre-trip inspection, driver 2's not doing a pre-trip inspection, but he's sitting in the cab of the truck, and we've already looked at the regulation that says that means you're on duty. Unless you just came out of the sleeper berth, which this truck doesn't have a sleeper berth, so that is not in play. So driver 1 is going to pre-trip from 7 to 7:15, then he's going to drive. He's going to get in the truck and he's going to drive for 8 hours. And then, obviously, based on the regulations we went over, he's required to take a 30-minute break. Now, it doesn't really matter. He could take his 30-minute break, and driver number 2 could drive if he wanted to during that 30-minute break, because driver number 2 is still only going to be able to be on duty for 14 hours, regardless of whether he's driving or whether he's not. So driver 1's going to take his 30-minute break. Let's say they're fueling, okay? Again, they're still on duty. They're taking a break. They're on duty. They started at 7 a.m. So then they're going to drive. He's going to get back in, and after his 30-minute driving status change, he's going to drive from 3:45 to 6:45, and then he's off duty at 6:45. So he's going to switch because his 11-hour clock is up, because he drove from 7:15 a.m. to 3:15, which is 8 hours, and then he drove from 3:45 to 6:45, which is another 3 hours. So his 11-hour clock is up. So come 6:45, driver 1 has to get out of the driver's seat. So at this point, driver 2 can step in. Driver 2 can jump in at 6:45 and he can drive. But again, you have to remember that they started at 7 a.m. So they have to end their duty day 14 hours later. So the very latest they can be working or anywhere close to this truck is 9 p.m. So when driver 2 gets in and starts driving at 6:45, he's only going to be able to drive for 2 hours and 15 minutes until 9 p.m. Now let's say they run into an adverse weather condition or an adverse traffic condition or something like that. Then they can extend the day by 2 hours, but you really can't plan for that. The whole idea of having an adverse weather or traffic condition extension is the idea that you didn't know it was going to happen, and so you really can't plan for that at all. So something has to happen here to get these guys some rest, because whether it's convenient or not, the law says that when this guy's sitting in the passenger seat of a commercial motor vehicle, he is on duty unless he just came out of a sleeper berth, unless that time in the passenger seat is directly before or directly after a 7-hour break in the sleeper berth. So that's pretty much how this works. Now, just a couple ideas. One way this can be accomplished if you don't have a sleeper berth is maybe you've coordinated yourself in such a manner that you've got your drivers in different locations within your region. Maybe you have one driver, you know, in 3 or 4 different places who can be flex drivers that you can say, hey, meet me along the way. And if that driver is not sitting in the passenger seat of the car and they're not being technically on duty, they're still off duty till they jump in the truck, then you actually can get a little more time out of that. But remember, you're still going to have to not really be team driving, because your other guy is only going to have 3 hours worth of on duty time that he can sit in the front seat of that truck. And so, again, if you're driving for the whole 11 hours and you get out of the driver's seat and go over to the passenger seat, you're still on duty. And so you have to come off duty after 14 hours or you're breaking the law. And so there really isn't a way to team drive in a box truck in a way that's actually legal, because once you get out of the driver's seat, it's not like you're off duty. You still have to be on duty. So really all you can do is about 14 hours worth of driving in a day. So if your definition of team driving is just to squeeze that extra 3 hours of time out, then yes, you can absolutely team drive for up to 16 hours. Remember there's an exemption if you have adverse driving conditions, like you run into a traffic situation that wasn't reasonably able for you to be known before you got dispatched or before you started your trip or whatever. If you, let's say somebody has an accident that you had no idea about and it happened, you know, 5 minutes before you got there, and you got held up for, you know, 3 hours in traffic because it was a bad accident, you can actually extend your day to 16 hours under those circumstances. Or if you have really bad weather, inclement weather that, you know, you weren't aware was going to be an issue or something like that, those are adverse weather conditions that are defined in the same section under the definitions. And so you can actually extend your day. So in cases like that, you can get an extra 2 hours, but really you're going to be stuck with either the 14 hours or the 16 hours, regardless of the number of drivers that you have in the vehicle. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you for continuing to watch the content. Please let me know if there's something you want to learn or see that I'm not covering or haven't covered. Please remember to like and subscribe. Hit me in the comments if you need help with factoring. There's going to be a link in the description, and I commit to you now that the next video is going to unveil a partnership with a t-shirt company. We're going to have a t-shirt design that you'll be able to order if you're interested. And hope you guys have a good week, and hope you enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you soon.